Well, I don't like to be the one who brings this kind of news, but it so happens that the month shit show duo are stealing all the attention of the Big Two's games and blaming it on the royal family. How is this possible? Well, I'm going to dive in and break this down for you to expose Meghan's real plans.
Not once in his entire reign has the crown delivered a message this cold, this calculated, and this permanent. And the world felt every second of it. King Charles has never been this silent. We are not talking about a missed phone call. We are not talking about a family disagreement playing out behind closed doors. We are talking about a reigning monarch standing in the most powerful political city on earth, 40 minutes from his own son, and choosing, deliberately, surgically, and without a single word of explanation, to act as though that son did not exist. That is what happened in Washington, D.C. in early 2026. And nobody was prepared for it. King Charles III flew into Washington carrying the full weight of the British state. State itinerary. Diplomatic meetings.
She still doesn't understand there's a huge difference between royalty and celebrity. I think she's stunned by the fact that members of the royal family don't have agents.
White House officials. The machinery of monarchy operating at its highest level. Every room he entered carried consequence. Every handshake meant something. Every scheduled moment had been planned weeks in advance by people whose entire job is to ensure that nothing happens by accident. Harry was 40 minutes away. 40 minutes. The same distance as a short drive across a city. The same time it takes to eat a meal. Close enough that the distance itself was a statement. And Charles did not simply decline to visit. His team built an entire itinerary around the fact that Harry would not appear in it. Palace officials confirmed the schedule publicly before the visit even began. When Harry's team reached out through back channels, quietly, carefully, hoping for even a brief private meeting, the response came back clean.
This is also a time of change for my family.
No conditions. No alternatives. No counteroffer. The request was declined and the door closed behind it without a sound. Hi viewers. Do you think King Charles was right to refuse Harry that meeting in Washington, or do you believe no father should ever close that door on his own son? Drop your answer in the comments right now. I read every single one. Now here is what made that silence so devastating. Charles did not do this privately. He did not spare Harry the humiliation of a quiet rejection delivered through assistants in a carpeted hallway somewhere out of view. He did it in front of diplomats. He did it in front of the international press. He did it in the same city where American political power is concentrated in a way that exists nowhere else on earth. Every senior official in every room Charles entered understood the message immediately and completely.
Charles is not the pushover that the press seems to think he is and that they're trying to present him as being. He has not been taking his son's calls for some time now. He will not be exploited by his son.
Harry holds no standing with this crown. He is a private citizen. His proximity to the king means nothing at all. The international press registered it instantly. Reporters who cover the royal family for a living, people who have spent years parsing every seating arrangement and every carefully worded palace statement, described the Washington snub as one of the most pointed public communications the monarchy had delivered in years. Not through a press release. Not through a formal announcement. Through absence. Through a schedule with a name missing from it. That is a very specific kind of power. Most people, when they want to send a message, raise their voice. Charles lowered his. He went completely quiet and let the silence say everything he refused to put into words. That is not the behavior of a man reacting emotionally. That is the behavior of a man who has made a final decision and no longer feels the need to explain it.
Harry, put the case that Harry and Meghan and the kids do come back. Everywhere they go, it's going to look like they're being snubbed by the rest of the royal family. And the reason it will look like that is because they will be being snubbed by the rest of the royal family. The rest of the royal family They can't stand, well, they specifically can't stand Meghan, and they hate what Meghan's done to Harry. So they don't want to see them.
But here is what the world had not yet fully understood in those early hours after the Washington story broke. The silence did not begin in Washington. It ended there. To understand what drove Charles to draw that line so publicly, in front of the entire planet, with no softening and no exit left open for either of them, you have to go back to one specific night. One party. One choice Harry made that the palace watched in real time and never recovered from. You have to understand what Harry did on the most sacred night in the British military calendar. And once you understand it, everything Charles did in Washington will not just make sense.
He is capable of making the most stupid decisions, and this one could well be his stupidest.
It will feel like the only possible ending to a story that had already been written months before that plane ever touched down on American soil. Remembrance Sunday in the United Kingdom is not a ceremony. It is not a tradition in the way that word usually gets used, casually, interchangeably with habit. It is something older than that. Something heavier. The king stands at the cenotaph in London and the entire nation goes quiet. Not politely quiet. Completely quiet. Wreaths are placed for soldiers who went to war and never came home. Their names are read aloud, one by one, in front of a country that has decided, collectively, that forgetting them is not an option. It is the single most emotionally raw day in the British calendar. And Harry knew that better than almost anyone alive. In 2023, he and Meghan had honoured it. They visited Camp Pendleton. They sat with American service members and with Gold Star families, people whose sons and daughters had gone to fight and come back in coffins. They showed up. They paid their respects. They made the choice to be present on a day that demanded presence. In 2024, they did it again. Same commitment. Same intention. The precedent was set. Then came November 2025. The night before Remembrance Sunday, Harry and Meghan attended Kris Jenner's 75th birthday celebration at Jeff Bezos's Beverly Hills estate. The guest list reads like someone assembled every famous name in America and put them in one room. Adele, Beyoncé, Mariah Carey, Oprah Winfrey, Kim Kardashian, Snoop Dogg, Mark Zuckerberg. A Hollywood fantasy rendered in real life, right there on the most expensive real estate in California. Harry arrived in a black tuxedo. Pinned to his lapel was a remembrance poppy. The small red flower worn across the United Kingdom in the days leading up to Remembrance Sunday. The flower that means one specific thing to every British person who sees it. He wore it. He went to the party anyway. He and Meghan walked in together, holding hands, and the cameras were everywhere. A Hollywood source said it plainly afterward. If Harry and Meghan did not want the attention, they should have come in through the side door, the way Beyoncé and Jay-Z did. They did not come in through the side door. Now sit with this for a moment. Because Harry is not simply a royal who missed a commemoration. He is a combat veteran. He served 2 tours in Afghanistan. He flew Apache helicopters as a co-pilot and gunner in Helmand Province, one of the most dangerous combat zones of that entire conflict. He has spoken publicly about the reality of that service. The soldiers being honored at the cenotaph that Sunday included men who had served in that same province, in that same war. Some of them never made it home. Their names were being read aloud in London while Harry stood in Beverly Hills wearing their flower on his chest. That image went everywhere. The backlash was immediate and it was severe. The Sussex team went into full crisis mode. Harry and Meghan reportedly demanded that Kim Kardashian and Kris Jenner remove every photograph of them from social media. Their stated reason, carefully leaked to outlets they trusted, was that they wanted to show respect for fallen soldiers by not appearing in celebratory settings during a period of mourning. Kim addressed it publicly. She said the photos came down to honor Remembrance Day and suggested people should find a way to laugh about it. London did not laugh. Royal commentators said if the couple truly respected the occasion, they would have declined the invitation before they ever set foot inside the house. Military voices were far less measured. Disappointment was the word that kept appearing. Not anger. Disappointment. Which, if you understand how soldiers speak about these things, is considerably worse.
The world seems to spin ever faster. Our journeying may pause to quieten our minds. In T.S. Eliot's words, at the still point of the turning world.
Here is the detail that makes this story even darker. Before that party, before those photographs, before the backlash and the deleted images and the carefully worded statements, there were people inside the palace who were still quietly fighting for a reconciliation. Not publicly. Not through press releases. Through private conversations, through back channels, through the kind of careful, slow-moving effort that institutions make when they are trying to repair something without anyone watching. Sources confirmed that discussions had been exploring whether Harry could spend quiet time with Charles at Sandringham or Balmoral, away from cameras, away from the circus, just a father and a son in a room together. That possibility was alive. People were working for it. The Kris Jenner party ended it permanently. The palace had its answer. The Crown's most sacred traditions were not something Harry held with reverence. They were something he picked up when a PR crisis demanded it and set down the moment something more glamorous appeared on the calendar. And so the quiet conversation stopped. The back channels went cold. And months later, Charles stood in Washington, D.C., 40 minutes from his son, and the silence said everything the private conversations no longer needed to. But while Charles was maintaining that silence, Meghan had already decided what her next move would be. And what she said publicly, what she offered as her explanation for why everything in her career was falling apart, was one of the most remarkable things she had ever put her name to. What Meghan Markle told the world is this. Her Netflix projects are not stalled because the content is weak. Her brand is not struggling because Hollywood has grown tired of her. According to Meghan, the real reason her work is not coming out is that she respects King Charles III so deeply, she has been deliberately holding back her own projects to protect the royal family's reputation. Read that again. She is claiming that her cooking show, her lifestyle content, her entire brand portfolio, none of it can be released right now because she is too careful, too considerate, too protective of the king's feelings to let it go. That is the explanation she chose. Now here is what the paper trail actually shows. In 2022, the Netflix documentary that carried her name and Harry's used footage from private family WhatsApp messages. Recorded phone calls. Behind closed doors moments that members of the royal family never agreed to have filmed. In 2023, Spare put intimate details of family arguments into print. Private medical information about living relatives. Personal conversations that were never meant to leave the room they happened in. When those projects were being made and sold and watched by millions of people around the world, royal standards did not seem to exist for either of them. Nobody was protecting anybody. The institution was being taken apart piece by piece in front of a global audience and a check was being collected for it. To invoke royal decorum now, only now, specifically at the moment when contracts are being cancelled and the market has decided the product is overpriced, is not restraint. It is something else entirely. And the Oprah interview is where this story gets its deepest roots. In 2021, Meghan sat across from the most powerful woman in American media and said things that traveled around the world within hours. She said that while she was pregnant with Archie, members of the royal family had held conversations about how dark his skin might be when he was born. She connected this directly to Archie being denied a prince's title and being denied security protection. She presented these as a pattern. Harry confirmed the conversations happened. He refused to name who was involved. Oprah later confirmed that Harry told her the late Queen and Prince Philip were not part of those conversations, which left the suspicion sitting permanently on every other senior living member of the family. That accusation has never been retracted. Not once. Not even partially. In that same interview, Meghan said she had gone to the institution and asked for help. She told them she was not okay. She told them she was experiencing thoughts she could not control, thoughts about not wanting to be alive. She said the institution looked at what she was telling them and responded that getting her help would not be good for the institution. The palace issued a counter-statement. They said considerable resources had been offered to Meghan and that she had declined them. Neither side has moved from that position. The truth of what happened in those rooms remains disputed. But Meghan never took her words back. She has continued to place the weight of that period directly on the institution. Then there is the miscarriage. In the 2022 Netflix documentary, Harry stated directly that he believed Meghan suffered a miscarriage because of what the Daily Mail did. The paper had published a private letter Meghan had written to her estranged father during her pregnancy, triggering a lawsuit and weeks of severe stress that Harry said he watched destroy her from the inside. He acknowledged they could not know for certain. But he said clearly that he believed the media pressure caused the loss of their child. The same documentary revealed that the letter, the one the Mail published, had been written on the advice of Queen Elizabeth II and then Prince Charles. The institution Harry blamed for the media pressure that he believes cost them their child was the same institution that had guided the action that created the media pressure in the first place. And in March 2026, palace sources described what they called genuinely troubling behavior. Reports revealed that Harry's representatives were pushing for enhanced security arrangements specifically so he could bring Archie and Lilibet to visit the king. A palace source stated that Harry had already lost his security case in court and was now using the possibility of the king's grandchildren never seeing their grandfather again as leverage. The word used by palace insiders was emotional pressure. They called it appalling. Every single one of these confrontations, these accusations, these revelations, had been broadcast to the world through Oprah Winfrey. The 2021 interview reached 17 million American viewers. It was the most watched celebrity interview in years. But that interview is now considered a liability inside Hollywood, and the reason is specific. During the broadcast, Meghan said that she and Harry had held a private wedding ceremony in their garden 3 days before the public royal wedding. The Archbishop of Canterbury, the man who had actually conducted the ceremony, stated publicly and without ambiguity that the only legal and valid marriage was the one that took place on May 19, 2018. There was no private garden ceremony. Oprah has since placed herself at complete and permanent distance from the couple. People inside the industry describe it as a do-not-mention arrangement. The most powerful woman in American media quietly and thoroughly walked away. That withdrawal is not just significant. It is a verdict. The money had been running out for longer than anyone wanted to say out loud. And when it ran out completely, Harry did the one thing he had spent 5 years swearing in courtrooms and in speeches and in front of every camera that would carry his voice that he would never do. He put his children on camera and kept them there. Let me give you the numbers first, because the numbers tell this part of the story with a precision that commentary cannot match. At his peak, Harry commanded between $300,000 and $400,000 per speaking appearance. By early 2026, a corporate appearance in Australia had brought in $50,000. That is a collapse of more than 80% of his market value in under 5 years. The Montecito estate costs approximately $1 million annually in mortgage and maintenance alone. That figure does not include the private security operation, the staff, or the travel infrastructure required to maintain their public presence at any level. At his current rate, Harry's speaking income covers roughly half the cost of the house before a single other expense enters the picture. The math does not work. It has not worked for a long time. Harry sued a photographer in 2021 for taking aerial photographs of Archie playing in their private garden. He went to court. He won. He gave speeches about the damage that media exposure causes to children. He drew directly from his own childhood, from watching his mother Diana followed and consumed by a press that treated her life as entertainment. He aligned himself with advocacy groups that argued posting children's images without consent is a fundamental violation of their rights. In 2026, he flew to Canberra and stood before Australian politicians lobbying for stricter regulation of children's content on social media. He framed it as child protection. He presented himself as someone who understood, more deeply than most, exactly what that exposure does to a young life. The man delivering that speech was the same man whose team was uploading videos of Archie and Lilibet to Instagram to keep their lifestyle financially alive. Australian journalists noticed. They wrote about it by name. On April 5, 2026, Meghan posted Easter videos to Instagram. Archie and Lilibet moving through the garden on an egg hunt. Lilibet in a summer dress and pink bunny ears, walking alone with her basket. Archie at a table decorating eggs. Comments were turned off before anyone could respond. But the audience tore the footage apart anyway. Archie and Lilibet appeared nearly the same height despite being almost 2 years apart in age. Viewers noted that Lilibet appeared barefoot and dressed for warm summer weather while Archie, in the same frame, was dressed in a full jacket suited for cold. A skiing clip posted separately, showing Harry and Archie on snow slopes, had already prompted questions about whether footage from different recordings at different times had been assembled together. But the observation that spread furthest was simpler than any of that. Why are these children always completely alone? No friends. No cousins. No extended family visible anywhere. Just 2 small children on a large estate, with their mother following them at a distance with a camera while the world watched. Someone in the comments wrote that the most devastating moment in the entire Easter video was watching Lilibet walk through the garden by herself, knowing her mother was right behind her, and choosing to film instead of take her hand. That same Easter Sunday, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis attended the Easter Matin service at St. George's Chapel in Windsor. They walked in public procession surrounded by their parents, their grandparents, Princess Anne, and the full assembled working family. They were inside something. Connected to something. Surrounded by history and by people who would be there long after any camera had been put away. The contrast between those 2 sets of children on that same Easter Sunday did not require explanation. It was visible. And it was final. Harry had spent years constructing a wall around his children using every legal and public tool available to him. He argued for them in courts. He campaigned for them in speeches. He built an identity around being the father who would never allow what happened to his mother to happen to his children. By the spring of 2026, financial pressure had done what no court order and no press photographer ever could. It made him take that wall apart himself, brick by brick, and sell the view. And while that was happening in Montecito, something else was happening in London. Something the palace never announced. Something that arrived without a press release, without a ceremony, without a single word designed to draw attention to it. The institution had found its replacement. And the speed and the completeness with which it had been done was the most devastating message the palace had ever sent without saying anything at all. His name is James Alexander Philip Theo Mountbatten Windsor. He holds the title Earl of Wessex. He is 18 years old. He is the son of Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh, and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh. He is the youngest grandchild of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip. And here is the detail that carries a particular sting. James is the first of the late Queen's grandsons to be born in 23 years. The previous one was Harry. James grew up in Harry's shadow without ever knowing it. He is now standing in Harry's space without ever having asked for it. From the moment he was born, James was legally entitled to be called Her Royal Highness Prince James. That right belonged to him. His parents chose not to use it. And the reason Sophie gave in 2020 is worth sitting with. She said they were raising their children with the understanding that they would very likely need to work for a living. So the title stayed on paper. James grew up without a crown over his head and without the assumption that the world owed him anything. He was raised to earn his position. Harry was raised to assume his could never be taken away. That single difference explains everything that has happened to both of them. In 2022, when Queen Elizabeth died and the grief of a nation broke open in public, James was 14 years old. He stood vigil beside his grandmother's coffin at Westminster Hall. In silence. Alongside William, Harry, Peter Phillips, and Zara Tindall. The entire world was watching and James stood completely still. In 2023, he attended the coronation of King Charles III. In March 2024, He was the only member of the younger generation of royals who appeared at the Easter Matin service at St. George's Chapel. He shows up. He does the work. He goes home. No production company filming it. No Netflix deal attached to it. No carefully worded statement released afterward to shape the narrative. Palace insiders call the strategy built around James the doctrine of continuity. The plan is to position him as everything the Sussex brand spent years and millions of dollars trying to imitate and failing to become. Where Harry and Meghan turned the monarchy into a stage for personal grievances and strategic revelations, James represents something the institution had almost forgotten it could produce. A young royal who simply appears when he is needed, performs without conditions, and does not burn anything down on the way out. Multiple commentators have compared his composure directly to the late Prince Philip. William views him as a critical institutional asset. And Edward and Sophie have formed a wall of support around him that has not shown a single crack. Every argument Harry held for years about why the palace would eventually need him back dissolved the moment James stepped into those public duties and performed them without complaint, without conditions, and without a camera crew on his payroll. The numbers confirmed what the palace had already known. UK public approval of the monarchy climbed to its highest point since the immediate aftermath of the Queen's death in 2022. British tabloids that had built years of circulation on Sussex stories began cutting that coverage voluntarily. Not because editors made a moral decision. Because their readers had stopped caring. The commercial case for Sussex content collapsed in the British press at exactly the same speed it collapsed in Hollywood. The audience left. The papers followed. The palace had already moved on long before either of them noticed. Harry had believed for years that the institution would come back to him. That the slimmed-down monarchy Charles had built would eventually create a gap that only Harry could fill. He held on to that belief through the court cases and the collapsed deals and the falling speaking fees and the silence from Washington. He held on to it the way people hold on to things when letting go would mean admitting that a decision made years ago was wrong and cannot be undone. An 18-year-old walked into the room. And Harry's leverage evaporated overnight. The monarchy did not punish Harry. It did not chase him or condemn him or spend a single press release mourning what he had chosen to walk away from. It did something far more final than any of that. It cleaned out the space he had left, found someone to fill it, and moved forward so completely that the question of Harry's return stopped being controversial. It stopped being a question at all. The office was cleared. The name was off the door. The person sitting at that desk got there by earning it, quietly, year by year, without asking for anything and without making anyone pay for the privilege of watching him do it. Now, what nobody has reported yet is the specific role the palace is quietly preparing James to take on, a role that carries a title, a function, and a history that would have belonged to Harry. That story is coming. And when it does, the final chapter of the Sussex era will not require any commentary. It will simply be over. Make sure you are subscribed, because when we cover that next, you will not want to have missed this one first.